This is Roblox's most infamous humanly impossible obby, the Citadel of Void. And despite how popular this impossible citadel has become over time, nobody has ever legitimately done this single obstacle within the citadel for 5 entire years. Until now. It all begins in early 2019 when Juke had created the Tower of Void, and this is how the entire Void series had begun. However, this first version of the Citadel of Void was nothing compared to the current one, and the Tower of Void was never actually finished. Instead, it was scrapped and then rebuilt from the bottom up as a mega collab, and once every single floor was finished, this went on to become the Tower of Eternal Void, which nowadays stands at the high horrific difficulty, and less than 100 people have completed this tower. So how does the Tower of Eternal Void go on to become the Citadel of Void? Well, it was extended to have 2 more floors, and the wind pad ended up being placed at the entrance into floor 13, which would officially turn this into a citadel, because yeah, citadels are just towers with over 10 floors. And then 5 big booms, suddenly the tower got an extra 10 floor extension because I guess the collab members just decided to turn this into a fat citadel by adding this massive descending section, with some extremely prominent builders such as Blockerman666, Theodoric and many others working on the citadel all at once. However, later on, this old version of the Citadel of Void would go on to receive a ton of revamps, which ended up as the Citadel of Void that we all know and love today. So because this was like the first high quality impossible obby to ever be built on Roblox, the Ito community absolutely loved it, and it became extremely popular over time, with the showcase alone receiving over 1 million views up to this day, along with a bunch of newbies thinking that this citadel is someday going to be completed, because every competitive community of course has to argue about the human limits of video games. So yeah, sorry, no offense to you, but it's quite literally impossible. It's never getting completed, alright? And this brings me to the single obstacle that took 5 years to be completed for the first time ever. But how? Don't people all jump this citadel all the time in games such as Caleb Soul Crushing Domain? Well, no, not legitimately that is. First of all though, if you're not familiar with what all jumping means, it literally means you do every single jump in a row with checkpoints and you can place as many checkpoints as you wish. Basically, going into all jump mode allows you to place a checkpoint anywhere you want. But how do people end up all jumping this if just one obstacle took 5 years to be completed on floor 9? Well, you see, in Caleb Soul Crushing Domain, you can actually not only spam a crap ton of checkpoints at the same time, over instant kill bricks to literally avoid dying, which lets you completely skip sections like this one, but you can also place checkpoints mid-air and use a few cheeky skips that the community has found over time, such as this balloon skip that I myself used in my all jump completion to skip a few sections of the citadel. So this makes obstacles like this one 1,000 times easier to complete by simply either putting a checkpoint mid-air or just skipping it entirely. And yes, out of every single one of the 225 Citadel of Void all jump completions as of me making this video, including my own, all of these completions have used strategies and skips like that, which technically makes it illegitimate because you don't actually have to do every single obstacle. But PCZM, don't you know about the Citadel of Void project, which is a community whose sole purpose is to complete the citadel in as little segments as possible? You know, they have done it in 57 total segments as of right now. So what are you exactly saying? Well, guess fucking what, boy? One of the segments is literally a 5-second segment of somebody doing half of this obstacle legitimately, which was actually done in 2024. And if that doesn't prove that the Citadel of Void is quite literally impossible, then I don't know what to tell you anymore. However, this segment did prove that this obstacle was technically humanly possible, but because of how tedious it is to actually do this and how precise you have to be, nobody really ever gave it a shot for longer than than just a few hours. So what exactly do you have to do if you actually want to complete this single obstacle? Well, first of all, you have to jump off of this curb-like truss onto this wall hop, and then wall hop on this part until the beat blocks next to you disappear for like a second. And doing that first wall hop is literally easy compared to this next section, because you literally have to get under this part without hitting your head, and then do this weird wall walk head hitter wall hop thingy to get on top of the curb-like ladder. And to get the perfect wall hop height to not hit your head in the first place is like basically pure RNG. Let alone controlling your camera perfectly to wall hop with a part above your head, and then doing a head hitter wall hop out of it to actually land the jump properly is just crazy. And so despite this technically being humanly possible to pull off, of course nobody had done this obstacle legitimately for 5 years. Until now, that is. Yo, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this video is sponsored by the CItadel Tournament Rio. Okay, so basically, if you have ever played the Roblox Battles event, you would probably love to see something like that, but with Roblox obby YouTubers instead competing against each other. And that's exactly what the CItadel Tournament is. However, if you actually want the CItadel Tournament host, BebPlays, to give me a chance to compete into the CItadel Tournament, and to see me go against another YouTuber, you have to vote me into the tournament with the CItadel community voting application, where anybody can vote for their favorite YouTubers to compete. So if all of that sounds like some lovely extra content to see your guy Mr. PCZM competing into a tournament, then make sure to vote me with the link in the description and watch out for season 3. Oh, and I would also love if you could subscribe and like, but no pressure of course. Anyways, with that said, back to the cutscene. This is Egg Furry, aka Tier Bowden 123, and Egg Furry has a ginormous passion for pushing the Citadel of Void to its limits, with some segments like this one on screen for example. Yeah, and not to mention that he holds the world record R-jump speedrun of the Citadel as well. However, he of course uses mid-air checkpoints for the obstacle we're talking about. That is, until Egg Furry decided to actually attempt to be the first ever person to legitimately complete this obstacle, after many others had tried to do the same before but failed. Since every single obstacle in this entire Citadel had already been completed except this last single one, which up to this day subjectively remains as the hardest obstacle to legitimately complete within this entire Citadel. So how did he do it? Well, to put it simply, he just raw dogged it for a total of 30 hours until he finally landed the obstacle for the first time ever, proving that it's actually humanly possible, which finally meant that the entire Citadel of Void had actually been R-jumped in multiple segments. However, I just want you to picture how tedious it really is to do the same jump for 30 fucking hours in total. Hell, I literally beat the Tower of Jabberwock Jagger faster than he did this, which is horrific difficulty. Sadly though, this achievement can't actually be considered like the hardest jump ever landed on Roblox, simply due to the fact that it's like multiple jumps within the same obstacle because of wall hops, since wall hopping basically counts as doing multiple jumps. But either way, it's quite literally impossible to perfectly give this obstacle a difficulty in the first place. With that said though, doesn't this theoretically mean that the Citadel of Void is actually humanly possible? Well no, not even close actually. In fact, I don't even think this is possible to do in under like 40 segments for example. And it all makes sense if you really play through the entire Citadel because of floors such as floor 9, 17, and floor 21, just to give some examples. And yes, all of those floors are all humanly impossible to legitimately do in one segment, let alone doing them legitimately in an entire attempt without a single mistake. It would quite literally take you like an infinite amount of years. And I don't think I have to mention why that is so. I mean, just look at this. You literally have an RNG section on floor 17, for example. However, this does technically make the Citadel of Void possible to all-jump fully legitimately. But for now, that's what the Citadel of Void remains at and most likely forever will. So if you enjoyed this video, I would love if you could watch some more.